Nice.
Thank you.
My turn? Pretty good.
Ready?
Ready.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. Today we are doing lesson 134. Let me perceive forgiveness as it is. Let us begin. Alex.
Before I begin, I would just like to talk a little bit about the pause in doing videos, where I've been, what I've been going through, and what has me doing a video again tonight. It's been hard for me to find motivation to even get up and go to work, let alone do a video, do paperwork, do anything but the bare essentials in life. I've even stopped taking the dog for a walk. And it all has to do with insecurity of stability of my life. And not knowing if, not knowing if I'm going to have a home 2 months from now or a month from now.
A month.
And it kind of makes it pointless to continue going to work, to continue doing the same routine, when there's this very real and imminent issue that's coming up that has the potential to literally turn our lives upside down. Literally change our lives forever. And that is the fact that I don't believe that we can afford the rents or can even find a rental or a home here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so the idea of being homeless, it's like, well, how am I going to go to work then? And why am I doing this? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I even here? What's my point? What's my purpose? You know, and I was sitting here on the couch thinking about that. Actually, I was praying about that when I was in the pyramid as well. Asking those questions. And a thought came to me that if there's nothing that I can do to find joy or happiness in my life, is there anything that I can do to give joy and happiness in someone else's? And then I remembered how earlier tonight you were crying because you felt sad that you weren't able to fulfill your purpose in doing these videos. And so I realized, if I can't at least find a purpose for myself, at least I have the ability to help somebody else fulfill a purpose that they desire, that they are drawn for, that they are inspired for. So I can draw off of your inspiration and maybe find purpose in that.
Yeah.
It doesn't... It's on your shoulder.
What is it?
A little bug. Flying bug.
A flying bug.
Yeah.
What kind of flying bug?
I don't know. It looked kind of like a miniature grasshopper.
Weird.
Like a grasshopper the size of a mosquito.
That's scary.
Or a small moth. Anyways, I just felt the need to share that. That's why I'm doing this video.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm very limited in my technical abilities. And I recognize that in many ways. There are many, many things that I am not capable of dealing with and doing, especially when it comes to computers and technology. I'm severely dyslexic, so when I try to deal with electronics, I'm more likely to short them out when I touch them than to get them to do anything at all. It's like when I deal with electronics, I have to be very careful, very cautious. Alex has found out firsthand that when I deal with electronics, they stop working. And it's usually because they've been zapped electronically in some way.
I think statically would be a more accurate terminology.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Static?
Static electricity. Because you shocked me a number of times.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm dragging my feet either. I just have a lot of electrical energy that comes off of me to where I short things out. I can't wear watches, things of that nature. And so dealing with trying to make these videos, not only can I not deal with the electronics of it, I can't even deal with the software, the programs and such. When I look at that stuff, I have no comprehension. And Alex has tried to explain it to me, have me write down how to do things, like this, like this, like this. And yet when I look at that screen that has all that stuff there, it's like a foreign language, no comprehension. And so me being able to do a video is nigh impossible for me without having Alex's help. And in that respect, we are very much a team in everything. Because there's many things that I cannot do without him, and there's many things he can't do without me. We work off of each other's strengths and weaknesses and try to complement each other in that. What I'm strong in, he's weak in. What he's strong in, I'm weak in. So we tend to balance each other very well.
All right, let's begin the lesson. It's just the lesson, nothing from the text. So let us begin. Workbook Lesson 134. Let me perceive forgiveness as it is. Let us review the meaning of, quote, forgive, for it is apt to be distorted and to be perceived as something that entails an unfair sacrifice of righteous wrath a gift unjustified and undeserved, and a complete denial of the truth. In such a view, forgiveness must be seen as mere eccentric folly, and this course appear to rest salvation on a whim. This twisted view of what forgiveness means is easily corrected when you can accept the fact that pardon is not asked for what is true. It must be limited to what is false. It is irrelevant to everything except illusions. Truth is God's creation, and to pardon that is meaningless. All truth belongs to Him, reflects His laws, and radiates His love. Does this need pardon? How can you forgive the sinless and eternally benign? The major difficulty that you find in genuine forgiveness on your part is that you still believe you must forgive the truth and not illusions. You conceive of pardon as a vain attempt to look past what is there, to overlook the truth, in an unfounded effort to deceive yourself by making an illusion true. This twisted viewpoint but reflects the hold that the idea of sin retains as yet upon your mind as you regard yourself.
Yes. Now, what that brings to mind for me, folks, is how I had to really look at what I was holding forth and believing in as being true, as defining me, the world, and my brothers within it in regards to my rapes and molestations. And every time that I was told that I needed to forgive those things that happened and forgive myself for allowing them to happen, it ate at me inside that just did not feel right. That they had twisted it in some way to mean something else was obvious to me. Because as a child, how do I need to be the one to forgive myself for something happening to me that I had no control over? And that was something that I really had to look at, because I kept trying to forgive myself for something that I couldn't control. As if I had some way of being able to stop a full-grown man from raping me at 9 years of age. It just didn't compute in my mind. It had no meaning. Because that just... I'm having a hard time articulating this particular concept and idea of this belief that I'm supposed to forgive myself for another attacking me, as if I had any control over it. And as a child, I could not comprehend it. As an adult, I still could not comprehend it, because I always recognized that I had never done anything wrong. I could never make true their belief that I had. And it's that kind of twisted thinking that it's speaking of. That in many ways you may have been trained to think and believe that you are the one that has done something wrong and that you need to forgive yourself for it. That is the twisted kind of thinking it is speaking of here. It's what makes you think that there are sinners, that there's bad, that there's wrong, evil. All those things are nothing more than judgments that have been taught to you as a way to control you. I've spoken before about forgiveness. What it was broken down for me to was forgiving. It was something for me to give to Holy Spirit. For Him to show me the truth of what I was thinking and believing something to be. Just like those rapes and molestations, I had to look at the judgments I had taken in and accepted as being the absolute truth about them. Because folks, until I was told it was wrong, it was bad, and all those other things, I had no idea that any of it was. I had to look at the fact that I was feeling pleasure at the things that was happening with me. And let go a judgment and a guilt that I did find pleasure in being touched. That the way my body reacted was not some kind of sinful thing. And it was things of that nature that had been twisted and taught to me that I had to look at and let go of. And part of what it's talking about there is, as it said in that first paragraph, how we see that forgiveness thing as being an eccentric folly. That they must be crazy to think that I'm going to forgive them for doing this or that to me. And as I've shared before, I had to look at all those judgments I was holding about these things. Some that had been handed to me and some that I chose to make on my own. And give those judgments over to Holy Spirit for Him to show me the truth of them, that they were all lies. That everything was a lie that I was picking and choosing to believe in. Please continue.
Because you think your sins are real, you look upon pardon as deception. For it is impossible to think of sins as true and not believe forgiveness is a lie. Thus is forgiveness really but a sin, like all the rest. It says the truth is false, and smiles on the corrupt as if they were blameless as the grass, as white as snow. It is delusional in what it thinks it can accomplish. It would see as right the plainly wrong, the loathsome as the good.
This brings to mind, folks, everything that's happening in our political arenas right now, throughout the world. Everything that's going on all of these college campuses, in Washington, D.C. right now, and in the UK, France, Belgium, all of those places out there, Germany, all of the chaos that's happening right now is speaking to how they have tried to make true what is false. How they are trying to twist everyone's thinking to accept pedophilia as being normal. To normalize relationships between grown men and women and children of a sexual nature. These are the things that are happening here, real time, in the real world, as we know it. And as it says here, it says the truth is false and smiles on the corrupt as if they were as blameless as the grass, as white as snow. Look at what's happening within the Catholic Church right now. With all of these priests being forgiven by the church for the raping and molesting of the children. Saw an article today about a priest that admits to raping young girls between the ages of 5 and 10, about 30 to 40 of them, knowingly, while he has HIV. These are the things that they are trying to normalize and say, it's okay. It's not okay. This is how the ego is twisting things to be what they are not. And we need to be willing to see it for what it is. And choose differently. Choose the truth over the lie. Please continue.
Pardon is no escape in such a view. It merely is a further sign that sin is unforgivable, at best to be concealed, denied, or called another name. For pardon is a treachery to truth. Guilt cannot be forgiven. If you sin, your guilt is everlasting. Those who are forgiven from the view their sins are real are pitifully mocked and twice condemned. First by themselves for what they think they did, and once again by those who pardon them.
Exactly. What was that realization we came to the other day about how all of the people that are in power throughout Washington, D.C., and the governments around the world have been using tools of control and manipulation against their peers, the other people that are in office with them, such as with these pedophile rings that are coming to light. Everything has been a matter of finding leverage to control another, putting them in situations where they have to suddenly make a choice. Either they go with the corruption, or they lose everything, or so they think. Who was it that we were just listening about this the other day?
I think well, at least what was coming up for me was how the Clintons are, and how they make sure they have dirt on anyone and everyone, and so that they could literally get away with murder.
Yeah. But there was and
I think that's why
a financial banker.
Actually, I think that's why the FBI director has been fired by Trump, because he wouldn't prosecute Hillary.
Mm-hmm. Because
I think that's what it comes down to, right there in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, he can't prosecute Hillary. The very fact that he stepped out there on that limb like that, saying that, went against all protocols and everything, because he doesn't have a say. But for him to come out and say something like that,
What did he say?
Oh, that I feel she should not be prosecuted. That there is nothing here, and just, or there's other things or something, but I don't know the exact way he said it. But it came down to him, one, overstepping his authority to say or do anything, because it's not up to him. It's up to the DOJ, the Department of Justice, to pursue her or not. So he had stepped out of line in doing so. And then to not, do anything about, what's her name being caught on the tarmac with Bill in a private meeting on her plane.
With the FBI.
It's like there was way too much going on.
Obviously, it was a meeting where Hillary was showing the FBI director the dirt that she had on him. And that's why he's not prosecuting.
Yeah.
But either way, it means he's compromised.
Yeah. And that's how most of them are. They're all compromised in that way. But this whole thing with this particular paragraph, it's true. Pardon is no escape in such a view as it is speaking of here, like I was saying. It's like no matter what is happening, you can say you forgive that person, but yet you're still holding judgments of them. There is no pardon because you're still believing in those moments that something has gone wrong, something has been done, in that something should be different than what it was. All judgments of the experience in and of itself. And as I had already shared, I felt guilt at the fact that I did feel pleasure at being touched. And that kind of, excuse the terminology here, folks, but that was a mind fuck from hell. Because that mind fuck literally had me feeling guilt, shame, and fear about my own body and my body's responses. That if I felt anything happening within my body in conjunction to another human being that wasn't based out of anger, hatred, fear, something of those natures, it was wrong. If I felt any soft, loving, desirous type feelings for anyone, I was considered bad and wrong. And I should feel shame and guilt. It's like when my husband and I first met, I would literally cover myself and hunch my shoulders and hide my figure. I would wear loose, baggy clothing that would hide everything. Because I was afraid and ashamed of the body I have. And it was those kinds of things, because of the rapes and molestations as that child, that I learned that shame and that fear and that guilt. And then I would get it from my peers. Shame, fear, guilt, because I was shaped differently than they were. Where my peers were sticks, I was more than a bump on a log.
Voluptuous?
There you go. Voluptuous. Yeah, where most of my peers were thin and flat-chested, no hips, I was very voluptuous. By the time I was 13, folks, I was already in a D cup. 13 years old. And I only got bigger from there. Small waist, hips, huge chest. I did not look like a 13-year-old little girl. Because I wasn't built like the other little girls around me. And that caused me a lot of pain and suffering growing up. The attentions I would get were not the kinds of attentions I wanted. And they came from my peers and the adults alike. And that made me terrified of men. Based on the history I had already had, I knew what those types of interactions would entail. Those invitations to come sit by them and talk with them. And it was those kinds of things that I had to look at that had me looking within in questioning. This particular paragraph is really speaking about those kinds of things that we are taught to think and believe are true about ourselves and the world and our brothers within it. And about how we have been taught to twist everything to mean something else. And that hidden shame, guilt, fear that underlies everything. Because in all of those, there is an understanding that judgments come with them. Please continue.
It is sin's unreality that makes forgiveness natural and wholly sane, a deep relief to those who offer it, a quiet blessing where it is received. It does not countenance illusions, but collects them lightly with a little laugh and gently lays them at the feet of truth, and there they disappear entirely. Forgiveness is the only thing that stands for truth in the illusions of the world. It sees their nothingness and looks straight through the thousand forms in which they may appear. It looks on lies, but it is not deceived. It does not heed the self-accusation shrieks of sinners mad with guilt. It looks on them with quiet eyes and merely says to them, "My brother, what you think is not the truth."
Brings back to mind what I had said to, what's her name yesterday on your post?
Sophia Barnett.
Yeah. About how she has chosen to project out that she believes herself to be a criminal, a dishonest innkeeper, as she was trying to say with that whole less miserables, and that we are the innkeepers in her mind.
Well,
and that everything that she was projecting out there is not true.
Right. So here's the thing. She had to vilify us because of some of the things you pointed out to her that triggered her. And then, so when many people are triggered, they have to demonize them, make them the enemy.
Attack.
Make them the enemy in their own minds.
Exactly. And I pointed out that, just because you believe this does not mean it's true. And basically I had said to her this exact thing here, my brother, what you think is not the truth.
Right.
And it just sent her off the deep end again. But it's things of that nature that we keep pointing out, that these things that folks believe aren't the truth. It's what they've been taught to think and believe. And when I'm laying this stuff out there, it's like I'm not asking for anything in return. I'm simply laying the truth before you as it's been put before me. I'm not reading something that came from some book or that I heard somebody else state. All of the information that I give comes from my own personal experiences and the lessons I've learned from them, from the questioning I have done about everything that I've experienced. And I'm extending out what I've received. I'm not fluffing it up in any way, not toning it down. I'm blunt and to the point. When I'm speaking with my brothers, I don't hold back and I don't color code it, sugarcoat it, whatever. Yeah, sugarcoat it. I simply don't do that. I am authentic and honest in who I am, where I have been, and where I'm coming from. And I only share the things that I've experienced personally. I can't speak of what I've never experienced. That's all conjecture if I do. And conjecture is not true, folks. There's no merit, meaning, or truth to conjecture. Please continue.
The strength of pardon is its honesty, which is so uncorrupted that it sees illusions as illusions, not as truth. It is because of this that it becomes the undeceiver in the face of lies, the great restorer of the simple truth. By its ability to overlook what is not there, it opens up the way to truth, which has been blocked by dreams of guilt. Now are you free to follow the way your true forgiveness opens up to you, in the way your true forgiveness opens up to you. For if one brother has received this gift of you, the door is open to yourself.
Yeah. And just like with her yesterday, I had refused all of her diatribes that she was flinging out there at me. And I continued to see past it all, to see her calls for love for what they were. That in her diatribe, she was calling out for love. And that she was holding on to beliefs about herself and projecting those out on her brothers. Demonizing her brothers, making them the enemy. Because she was afraid to really look at those things she was holding forth and believing to be true about herself. And in everything, folks, I've looked within. And I've questioned. And I've accepted all that God and Holy Spirit has given me. I've accepted their truths without judgment. I've asked for clarification, yet I've never judged. And in that lack of judgment, I have found true peace and happiness and joy within. Even as everything is in chaos around me, I still find peace, joy, and happiness. And that's what I extend to my brothers, is that understanding of what it is that they are looking on and judging. And pointing out how it is they're judging it and what they might need to look at within them. Their choice to believe that something of this nature may be true, or that. Please continue.
There is a very simple... do we already do that one?
Nope, that's it.
There is a very simple way to find the door to true forgiveness and perceive it open wide in welcome. When you feel that you are tempted to accuse someone of sin in any form, do not allow your mind to dwell on what you think he did, for that is self-deception. Ask instead, would I accuse myself of doing this? Thus will you see alternatives for choice in terms that render choosing meaningful and keep your mind as free of guilt and pain as God himself intended it to be, and as it is in truth. It is but lies that would condemn. In truth, is innocence the only thing there is? Forgiveness stands between illusions and the truth, between the world you see and that which lies beyond, between the hell of guilt and heaven's gate. Across this bridge, as powerful as love, which laid its blessing on it, are all dreams of evil and of hatred and attack brought silently to truth. They are not kept to swell and bluster and to terrify the foolish dreamer who believes in them. He has been gently wakened from his dream by understanding what he thought he saw was never there. And now he cannot feel that all escape has been denied to him.
True. So what it's speaking of there, folks, is that when you choose to go within and look at everything that you have been taught to think and believe are true, to look at all of the experiences you've had and how you yourself have judged them, how you yourself have been the one to pick and choose the meaning of what all of it's for. Even if something was being handed to you in those moments, a judgment of some sort, you still chose to accept it. You are the one responsible there. You, no one else. See, folks, it's taking responsibility for your choices and decisions to think, believe, say, and do as you are in any given moment. To recognize that, yes, as that child, you were taught these things, to do this and to do that, this way or that way. And that as an adult, you either continue doing those things you had been taught, or you start to question them and choose differently now. As a child, you had to conform. As an adult, you don't. You get to choose. And honestly, folks, even as that child, you get to choose, even when it seems like you don't. Even when it brings on your death, you still get to choose. Believe it or not. You know, that question that they give you there in paragraph 9, would I accuse myself of doing that? Would I accuse myself of doing this? When I had to look at those rapes, those molestations, the subsequent beatings, up until that point, I had continuously accused them, blamed them for all of the stuff that I had been going through in my life. That they were the cause of all my pain and suffering. And when I started questioning the things I had been taught to think and believe to be true about me, when I started looking at every one of those labels I had accepted as defining myself and recognizing for the lies they were, my next project was to start looking at the labels I was using to define everyone around me. All the things and all the people, I had to look at those labels. And I had to recognize that those labels were lies, just as the labels that I had been holding about myself were lies. When I simply chose to look at those and see them for what they were, a door opened for me to choose again, choose differently this time, and to see that there were other choices for me to make and that I was able to have when I let go that belief in that judgment. That I could choose again and choose differently this time and see it differently too. And it was that moment that bridge that it speaks of appears for you. When you choose to let go that judgment and ask, okay, if that isn't true, then what is? That bridge appears and shows you that these are the different things that could have been true in those moments. This is what was the absolute truth. They simply repeated a pattern that they had been taught to think and believe was the truth of what love was. And that what they were extending is what they thought and believed love to be. The first understanding I came to was that they were repeating a pattern they had been taught. Okay, just like I had repeated patterns, they repeated patterns. The next one was to understand that they were extending love, even though that was not truly what love was. They believed it to be love. I had to understand that in their minds, that is what they were giving. And that I, understanding that that's not what love was, perceived it differently, and so judged it differently. That in those moments, they saw nothing wrong with what they were doing. Even if, as that child, I could feel that something may have been wrong with it. But as I said, for me, at a certain point, I recognized that I did feel pleasure. It wasn't all painful or scary or anything of that nature. In many ways, it was a game. And I had to stop feeling guilty about that. Feeling shame at how my body responded. And to be able to forgive my choice to believe those judgments that were handed me. That's what I had to forgive myself for. That I allowed myself to be controlled and manipulated all of my life by accepting those judgments handed to me. That was what I had to forgive me for. And come to that understanding that as that child, I didn't know any differently. But as an adult, I now do. And as an adult, I can now choose differently. For a long time, I did feel like escape was denied to me. That all I was here for was to be used and abused. And that was because I continuously judged everything I was experiencing. I had to stop judging before I could find freedom. Please continue.
He does not have to fight to save himself. He does not have to kill the dragons which he thought pursued him, nor need he erect the heavy walls of stone and iron doors he thought would make him safe. He can remove the ponderous and useless armor made to chain his mind to fear and misery. His step is light, and as he lifts his foot to stride ahead, a star is left behind to point the way to those who follow him. Forgiveness must be practiced, for the world cannot perceive its meaning, nor provide a guide to teach you its, how do you pronounce that?
Beneficence.
Beneficence. There is no thought in all the world that leads to any understanding of the laws it follows, nor the thought that it reflects. It is as alien to the world as your own reality, and yet it joins your mind with the reality in you.
Yeah. So what it is speaking of there, folks, is that, as I was just speaking, when I turned within and questioned, I received an answer. And an understanding of the choices I had made to accept the judgments that were being handed to me at the time. So what it's saying there in paragraph 12 about he does not have to fight to save himself. I had to stop fighting. I had to stop picking and choosing and deciding which way I was going to go, when I was going to do it, and how I was going to do it. I had to stop trying to protect myself from everyone and everything around me, living in constant fear that everyone and everything was going to try and kill me, hurt me in some way. Even though that is what my experiences had been all of my life, that the world was trying to kill me, that everyone was out to hurt me and harm me. Even though that is exactly what my experiences had shown me to be the truth, I understood that none of that was true. It was an illusion that I was perceiving in those moments because I had judged and believed that something had gone wrong. And in everything, it's how I was choosing to think, believe, and perceive. The things that I was thinking to say and do myself, how I was choosing to react to everything. And all of those reactions were taught to me. Every single one were taught. They were learned, folks. And they can be unlearned. Please continue.
Today we practice true forgiveness, that the time of joining be no more delayed. For we would meet with our reality in freedom and in peace. Our practicing becomes the footsteps lighting up the way for all our brothers, who will follow us to the reality we share with them. That this may be accomplished, let us give a quarter of an hour twice today, and spend it with the guide who understands the meaning of forgiveness and was sent to us to teach it. Let us ask of him, let me perceive forgiveness as it is. Then choose one brother, as he will direct and catalog his, quote, sins. One by one they cross your mind. Be certain not to dwell on any one of them, but realize that you are using his, quote, offenses but to save the world from all ideas of sin. Briefly consider all the evil things you thought of him, and each time ask yourself, would I condemn myself for doing this? Let him be freed from all the thoughts you had of sin in him, and now you are prepared for freedom. If you have been practicing thus far in willingness and honesty, you will begin to sense a lifting up, a lightening of weight across your chest, a deep and certain feeling of relief. The time remaining should be given to experiencing the escape from all the heavy chains you sought to lay upon your brother, but were laid upon yourself. Forgiveness should be practiced through the day, for there will still be many times when you forget its meaning and attack yourself. When this occurs, allow your mind to see through this illusion, as you tell yourself, let me perceive forgiveness as it is. Would I accuse myself of doing this? I will not lay this chain upon myself.
Scroll down.
In everything you do, remember this. No one is crucified alone, and yet no one can enter heaven by himself.
Absolutely. So this harkens back to what I was speaking of, folks, about how I had to look at what I was thinking and believing to be true about the things I perceived in regards to the experiences I had of being raped and molested as a small child, of the beatings that incurred from those. And first I had to ask myself, would I accuse myself of these things? And then I had to look at these things that I was accusing my brothers of and ask for the truth of this. What was it that was really happening in those moments? How was it that I was perceiving this in those moments? What were the things that were being said and done in those moments? And when I looked at all this stuff, I saw the truth. I was shown the truth of the choices I made to think, believe, say, and do. To accept whatever was being said to me blindly at the time, because thinking that the adults must know the truth. They're the adults. They must know. And as I've said, found out that's not true. They don't know any better than me or you. But it wasn't until I looked at those things that I could let go those beliefs. And as soon as I did, I was freed. I no longer bore the weight of that shame, that guilt, and that fear. I stopped hiding. All of the things I've experienced, folks, I share and share freely. I no longer hide them in shame and fear, in guilt. I have no reason to hide any of those things. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing sinful or bad in any of the things that I experienced. They were simply an experience. To recognize that my brothers were misperceiving in those moments when they did the things that they did. When they extended to me the lies that they believed were the truth. All right, folks. That was lesson 134. Let me perceive forgiveness as it is. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sabrina Reyenga.
And my name is Alex Reyenga.
Hugs, love, light, and blessings on your journey, my brothers. You are loved. We love you. Please be the light you were meant to be. Please be the light we know you to be. Please be the light we see you to be. Please choose to be the light. Have a glorious day. Blessings on your journey.